of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in its later years. By season 6 or 7, were you hooked then because of the detail? You can let us know on Facebook at facebook.com/EGW Entertainment, on Twitter at Jonathan Clarke1, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Jonathan Clarke22. The show was produced by Josh Whedon, and he did a great job producing that show, and I didn't think the show was going to have as much detail as it ended up having. By season 2, I said to myself, there's no way this show is going to make it, because it's really too terrifying for the age demographic that it's trying to be distributed for. I mean, YTV picking it up, there had to be a lot of question in the minds of YTV when it came to Canadian television. If they wanted to show this show for the age demographic YTV generally was used to appealing to. I mean, this was a TV network that aired shows like Hey Arnold and Rugrats in their earlier years. Were they going to go from Hey Arnold and Rugrats, Nickelodeon-produced shows, all the way to Buffy the Vampire Slayer? It was a part of their late-night lineup on Friday and Saturday nights. And even though it was a part of their late-night lineup, they would get some of the highest ratings from that show, and that's why YTV kept it as long as they did. Of course, they censored a lot of the foul language used in the show. Other networks kind of strayed away from censoring the foul language because of the late-night airings of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. By the time the Space Network had picked it up, they kind of didn't really care too much about editing it, because the Space Network focused on a lot of sci-fi programming with kind of the similar language utilized. But YTV's distribution of the show, that had to be in question, but as the seasons got more detailed and more lengthy, they realized they were getting some of their highest ratings from it. With the edits, they were able to air it, and they got away with airing it. Of course, YTV would drop it from their lineup in later years as other networks would continue airing it as part of the werewolf vampire craze. And we're still seeing some of the highest ratings being brought in for television networks like MTV, Space, and Much Music because of the vampire werewolf craze and what the show exemplifies. Sarah Michelle Gellar also showed a lot of diligence in the role of Buffy, which was great for the show. She was one of the best actresses who ever had the distinction of playing Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and the other cast members who offered her a lot of support and a lot of enthusiasm. Of course, we had Allison Hannigan, Brandon Nicholson, who played Sander and Willow, and of course Anthony Stewart Head, who I recently saw an edition of Where Are They Now, focusing on him and what he's doing years after Buffy the Vampire Slayer was canceled after its final season. They did a great job in their different roles of the show. If not for all the actors and actresses who were featured on this show, and the different supporting actors who were featured in various editions of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it probably wouldn't have gotten as far as what 20th Century Fox was hoping for it to go. And in my opinion, this show got further than what 20th Century Fox had hoped for it to go. I mean, everything about the show was in the right place. There was a lot of merchandise, and all the seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer sold millions of copies and were released on DVD. And if they're ever released on Blu-ray here in 2013, 16 years after its premiere, it'll still be one of the hottest selling DVD and Blu-rays of all time. I'd love to see them redistributed, especially on Blu-ray, and get the chance to experience all the seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in high definition, which is something we never get a chance to do. You remember the video game, just talking about merchandise for PS2, I remember playing Buffy the Vampire Slayers 1 through 2. There were 2 video games released on this series. I mean, getting the chance to play as your favorite Buffy the Vampire Slayer characters and seeing them all be a part of a game that examined the history of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from the inception of the series up until its climax. I mean, it was a very lengthy game. There was a lot of combat, and there was actually authentic voiceovers used, and the graphic that was used for the PS2 case, which we'll be talking about in the coming weeks on this radio show, as we'll do a radio show specifically on the video game release of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That was fun. It really brought this series to life, and that was one of the hottest selling pieces of merchandise when it came to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not to mention all the other merchandise that was featured on the show. Who was your favorite character is another question, and probably a poll I could throw up on this website in relation to this week's topic for our radio show and our YouTube channel archives. Who was your favorite character, and who do you think brought the most, and who brought the best out of themselves for this series? Was it Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sarah Michelle Gellar? Was it Allison Hannigan, Willow? Was it Brandon Nicholson, of course, Sander? Or was it Anthony Stewart Head, the main actors and actresses? Or was it someone who was a supporting actor and actress who was only there for probably 1 through 2 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer? The one that played Darla, who was only there for a couple of episodes in season 1. Would have loved to have seen more brought out of her. Would have loved to have seen more brought out of the lead vampire, who was the leader of the cult, who tried to risen from the abyss and of course take over the world, who failed on all aspects of doing it. He came close by seasons 3 or 4, but he didn't really get the job done. I mean, there were so many actors and actresses who I'd love to have seen more out of when it came to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but we are at a point now where Buffy the Vampire Slayer really has established itself as a legendary program that will never be forgotten. I mean, people are still watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They are still searching for merchandise of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on eBay. There isn't a day that goes by I don't see something in relation to Buffy the Vampire Slayer thrown up on eBay. And many times that I browse through that website, I mean, auction websites are crawling with Buffy the Vampire Slayer merchandise, and people are still reviewing Buffy the Vampire Slayer, especially with this teenage vampire werewolf craze that's been caused by Twilight and the overwhelming success of that. Of course, that movie produced over $141 million worldwide for every edition of the Twilight Saga. And of course, the Vampire Diaries, which have seen many seasons, up through 5 to 6 seasons. That's why we're seeing Buffy the Vampire Slayer still talked about as much today as it was probably 10 or 15 years ago. But 15, 16 years after its premiere, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is still as popular as it ever was, and I really can't blame Buffy the Vampire Slayer for being still as popular as it was. There was a lot of action in that show too. There were a lot of terrifying scenes. Of course, for someone who watched it for the first time when he was 11 and saw the movie year prior to that, it was kind of terrifying to watch. Not even a teenager, I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. By season 3, I was really into it, and I'm sure a lot of people got into it just as much as what I did. But I will never forget the contributions that Buffy the Vampire Slayer gave to us, and having the chance to interview a couple of people who were involved with the production of that series, which you can actually find on different radio distribution websites and podcast feeds like blogtalkradio.com. I've interviewed a number of people who were involved with that series a number of times. That was a privilege of mine, and that was a moment and highlight of my career that I will never ever forget. And I really have to give a tremendous amount of respect and acknowledgement to Sarah Michelle Gellar for bringing this series to life in the way that she did. I mean, I've never seen a series quite as popular, quite as different as what Buffy the Vampire Slayer was. Original on times, but very different in a lot of ways. So in conjunction with this, we are inviting you to tell us what your favorite moments of Buffy the Vampire Slayer have been over the last 15, 16 years. Who are some of your favorite actors or actresses from the show? Was it Sarah Michelle Gellar? Was it Allison Hannigan? Who was it that was your favorite actor or actress? Who do you think had the best run out of them? And who do you think contributed the most to the show? You can let us know on Facebook at facebook.com/HW Entertainment, on Twitter at Jonathan Clarke 1, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Jonathan Clarke 22 as we celebrate over 15 and a half years of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, pretty close to 16 years, as we're 4 years away from them celebrating 2 decades, 20 years. We've never really talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and under the possible scenarios as to why we are talking about it from having nothing to talk about, which I will admit to you, 95% of the time we don't have a lot to talk about on this show, and that's why we've talked about so many various topics and why we've created so much diversity amongst our archives on this YouTube channel at youtube.com/Jonathan Clarke 22, which, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to, make sure you do. Do what the graphics suggest you to do, as our YouTube channel art tells you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, because you never know what might pop up here. 95% of the time we don't have anything to talk about. That's why we talk about so many various topics. The other scenario was that I probably have taken up crack, which I assure you is not the reason why we're talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Long story short, just the other day, actually, I was just watching a couple of episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I said, out of everything we've talked about, from Twilight to the Vampire Diaries, we have never talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer in extent. So that's why we're doing this and kind of getting it out of the way. We will probably go back to talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the coming weeks. We're going to give it a little bit of a break, but we're going to open up this YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitter for you to tell us what you've thought of Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the last decade and a half. It's been fun, hasn't it, watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she's given us some of her most memorable moments when it comes to the vampire, werewolf, demon, hyena craze over the years. What side do you side with, vampires or werewolves, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is in a category of its own, the first of its kind, and really everything else has just been a spin-off of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, either the original Buffy or the redistribution of it, which came in 1997. As I mentioned, I was there for the premiere of the series. I was there for the release of the video games, which had the original cast doing the voiceovers. I mean, it was just so much fun. All the years I had the chance of taking in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and just being a part of the series for doing interviews with supporting actor and actresses. I will never forget the opportunity I was presented with a couple of years after this radio show opened up its doors and broadcast for the first time ever, and I'm sure just as a fan of the show, you will not forget watching it as well. So tell us what some of your favorite moments of the series have been on Facebook at facebook.com/HW Entertainment, on Twitter at JonathanClarke1, and on YouTube at youtube.com/JonathanClarke22. As I assure you, either having nothing else to talk about or crack has anything to do with it. Just I've taken a lot of Buffy over the past couple of days and thought it would be an authentic way of separating this YouTube radio show from every other YouTube radio show you may have heard on YouTube. So if you found it in our YouTube channel archives or were just browsing through youtube.com and clicked on this video, we thank you for doing so. Like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube if you like any of the things we're talking about here on this YouTube channel as we celebrate over a decade and a half of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, once again assuring you that cracks had nothing to do with it. Trapped and Headstrong closes us out after the break.
When something takes place in the world of professional wrestling, you know where to go. WrestleZone.com. WrestleZone.com. Covering all the latest breaking news daily. Interactive forums where you can chat with thousands of other wrestling fans. Exclusive editorials and audio features by some of today's top wrestling superstars. Exclusive video content, weekly polls, live play-by-play coverage of every WWE and TNA pay-per-view. And now, featuring WrestleZone Radio, live with news, in-depth discussions, debates, and interviews with wrestling's top stars, past and present. When you think wrestling, think WrestleZone. WrestleZone.com.
He considers himself God's gift to wrestling, and millions of his faithful agree. With nearly 4 hours of footage and exclusive commentary and matches, this DVD chronicles Daniel's rise from Chicago's Windy City Wrestling to the Asylum in Nashville, and finally to the top of TNA. TNA Home Video presents Heaven Sent, Hell Bound, the best of Christopher Daniels. Available at most retailers and TNAWrestling.com.
Hey, you right there, the one listening to this show. While you're tuning into this broadcast or when you read the news on WrestleZone.com, are you forming opinions of it all? Or do you just agree with everything you see and hear? If you actually have some sort of afterthought, which, by the way, is normal, we want to know what it is. There are thousands of wrestling fans just like you that simply can't hold their thoughts in either, and they let it all out in our interactive forums. You have a voice.